Okay, so it was kind of a strange thing where we're right in the middle of a topic when the exam date fell, and so that some of the information on the homework assignment that's due on Monday was given to you before the exam, and then we'll pick up the rest of that today. But the assignment's due at the beginning of class. Now, I've just given you a handout to hopefully stimulate some of your thinking on the project. Now remember, there's two project options. Project option A is to create a cash flow diagram, well, not really the diagram, but a table of expenses and income and savings, just to sort of see what the financial picture could look like after graduation. This will be the third semester that I've given that project as an alternative, and the last time I graded it, my hand was starting to get really tired from writing the same thing over and over again on some of these student reports that I was grading. So what I did was I typed out my comments, and then I just started writing number codes on the student's paper, because rather than writing the same thing lots of times, then I could just say number 5, number 5, number 5 on the spots where I was thinking it. What I realized today was those notes of my complaints might be a great thing for you to take a look at before you complete your project, because these are sort of like the frequently made mistakes or problems that what you can do is debug your project before you turn it in, using this list as maybe one last screening once you've completed your report. So I hope it's helpful. There is also a sort of kickstart helpful document for Project Alternative B, which is the pump storage project. There are some hand calculations that I suggest that you step through, and then I can verify the answers to those hand calculations. Stop by my office, and I've got it all worked out with the numbers. And once you have gone through the hand calculations, it will really make each of the steps clear so that then you could transport that into a spreadsheet. Now, my impression is that the pump storage project is maybe a little bit harder, but it may appeal more to some of the students who really like Excel or want to try some of the advanced features in Excel, like Solver, which is kind of like GoalSeek on steroids. So that's what I've got to say about the project. I hope you're thinking about it. I hope even more that you've started something on the project, because it's due on Friday the 18th, and November is coming. Just like they say winter is coming, right? November is going to be here on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So, all right, now regarding the exam, you took the exam in class on Wednesday. I've already graded some of the exams, and the scores that I've already finished grading are posted on MU Online. I sent out a notification email to those of you whose exams I've already graded. There were 31 points available on the exam, and I'm going to enter your score as though there were only 28 points possible. And so that, I think, will give a pretty healthy boost to each of the scores. It's on the order of maybe about a 10% bonus. So, you know, when you look in the grade book, it'll seem strange because I think the first exam was out of 23, but each of the exams is weighted equally. I could have made exam 2 worth 5 billion points, but each of them is still worth 20%. It's just that when I looked at the questions, I divided up into parts, and I assign a point to each part. And so that's why sometimes they have a slightly different number of points, but the weighting in your overall average is the same. Now, of course, there's still a lot of additional points on the horizon with the final exam and the project. I think we've still got one more quiz in the class. There are still some homework points out there available. So if you're not where you want to be, you can bring things up a little bit. But now with the second exam, if your grade is in the 40% or the 50% range, it's going to be very difficult to climb out of that hole. And today is the drop deadline. And so I understand many of you are taking lots of courses all at once, maybe 5 or 6, and that's a heavy load, and you've got to balance your time. So, you know, if you're not doing as well in this class as you'd like, that maybe is just a reflection of not enough time available. This class is offered again next semester. If you do need to drop, at least you won't have to wait a whole another year for the opportunity to come around again. So if you need to drop the course, you can just bring the drop slip to my office, which is in the next building over. I'm going to be in my office most of the rest of the day grading exams, and I'll be happy to sign that for you. Any questions before we get into the new material? All right. So in the past, we have evaluated projects as a yes or no. Sometimes what we would do is we would screen them according to the MAR and say that if they are returning some rate of return lower than the MAR, then we reject them. When we had multiple alternatives, we would pick the one that we were going to do based on which one gave us the most profit. But there are many cases where you can do more than one project. And we're going to look at what sort of procedure you should follow when you have more than one project and you've got enough budget to fund maybe some combination of them. And so this is many of the same ideas you've seen before, like present worth analysis, but it's also introducing a little bit of a twist, which is you get to do more than one project at a time. So capital rationing is a way to describe the available pool of investment funds that your business or you personally may have, and you may have lots of great ideas but not enough money to put into every one of them. So let's say, for instance, you're living in Dubai, and the ruler of Dubai wants to make that a really amazing, fantastic place to try and wean his people off of the oil industry and kind of increase tourism and increase trade. So they've built some signature projects, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. Like this offshore island is all completely man-made, and they dredged sand from the sea and piled up enough sand and then compacted it to where they could build hotels and houses, really nice houses, and really expensive apartments. And so that's called the Palm. And another project they did, the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, it's really fantastic. One of the projects that was announced but never got built was a series of homes and hotels where it would be partly under the ocean and partly above the ocean. That's a really great idea if you think about it. How cool would it be for your living room to be underwater and it's like all around you is a fish tank? Clearly there's some technical hiccups when you go for an idea like that, and it's maybe part of the reason why it hasn't been built yet. It's really costly to develop all the technology needed. So 2 of those 3 have been built, and maybe part of the reason why the last one hasn't been built is that there are limits on available funds. So what you're going to learn how to do today is called a capital budgeting study. And the first step of such a budgeting study is to generate, for all the alternatives you have, a cash flow diagram or a cash flow table that shows the costs that are required, the revenues that can be anticipated, operating costs, salvage values, and so on. All the things that go into a cash flow diagram. Now, the next thing that you have to be aware of is that when you're doing a capital rationing study, the simplest approach is to, for all of the alternatives that you have, either assume that you're going to do it or not do it. That you can't build half of an underwater house, for obvious reasons, right? You can't build half of the world's tallest building, or it won't be the world's tallest building. So for the projects that we consider today in the in-class exercise, it's going to be yes, no on projects and no partial funding. So what it is that's restricting us choosing all of the alternatives is some budgetary constraint. It may be the amount of money that you can raise on the bond markets. It may be what the bank is willing to loan to you. It may be a pool of accumulated profits over time that a company has that it's looking to invest. But there's no such thing as infinite money. Now, the objective in this study is to find the combination of alternatives that maximizes your return on investment. In other words, that gives you the most profit. So, do you get the most profit by doing only the Palm? Do you get the most profit from doing the Palm and the underwater houses? You know, there's several different permutations and combinations of available projects, and you have to pick which of them is going to give you the most money. So here's kind of a conceptual representation of how such an analysis happens, where You've got several alternatives. A, B, and C are different alternatives. Each one of them has a different upfront cost, and they each have different useful lives. They have different cash flow diagrams. But what we can do is take them all to the present and find out the present value of each option so that we know if we do C, what our present value profits are, but if we do B and C, what's the total profits, and we also keep in our mind what are the total costs that we can pay now. So some combination may be impossible. We may not have enough money to do A, B, and C, so we have to go through a sorting process to consider all of the potential combinations of costs and all of the combinations of profits. Any questions so far about where this is heading or the thinking behind a rationing study? Okay. Now, there's something called a bundle. It's described in the book, and we're going to use the term today. A bundle is a combination of alternatives. So for our in-class exercise today, we have project A, B, C, and D. And you can see how much each of them costs in terms of how much money we need today, the dollars at year 0 to do it. One of the alternatives is always do nothing. So that's one of our options. But what this bullet point says here is that if you have m projects, there are 2 to the m possible bundles. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 projects. And so what this is saying is that there are 2 to the 4th power possible combinations, meaning there can be A, that's one grouping possibility. There can be B, there can be C, and D. So there's 4 out of the 2 to the 4th. By the way, what is 2 to the 4th? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is what? 16? I'll take your word for it. All right. So we've already figured out A, B, C, and D are 4 of the bundles. What I'd like you to do is the first step when I give you the in-class exercise paper is try and figure out what are the other combinations. If you have your computer today, that will be helpful. This can be done manually, but with many things, Excel will speed up some of the calculations that otherwise would be repetitive and monotonous. So if you do have your computer, I'd encourage you to get it out. If you don't have your computer, it's not a national emergency. Not this time. So write out all of the possible alternatives, and if you have your computer, what you can do is you can create a table of them, each of the possible combinations. Here at the top, I put a certain number here to correspond to the budget limit. It doesn't have to be in that cell. You can put it anywhere. But in these steps, the first thing, calculating the bundles. We know there's 16 and identifying what they are. Step B is just finding out how much is required for each bundle. So the cost is given for A, B, C, and D. And then AB is just the sum of the two costs, cost A and cost B. So I'm saying A plus B. And what I could do, oh, that's not what I want to do. I could label the amounts just with the letters that they correspond to. So A, I could label that cell reference A. I could do this one as, I could start calling it B. I could call that one C. Let's see if this works. And this D. And then the advantage of doing that is then I can just say equals A plus B. Oh, no, it didn't work. Huh. D. Oh, for whatever reason, I didn't do this one. So let me B. This one is called C. Well, anyways, I guess that's not going to work. Probably because the column name, there's a column C, so the names have to be a little more complicated. So I'll just use the cell references instead. For each of these combinations, and there are 16 of them, of course, 16 bundles. Okay, our budget limit is 23,500. And so you can manually go in and say yes or no to all of these, but you may want to automate the process and have it go a little bit more quickly. And that would be especially true if we had, let's say, 5 possibilities, and you're doing 5 to the second, or if you had 6 different project possibilities, then the list of combinations would be really lengthy. And so what we want to do is set up an if statement. And maybe some of you have already done if statements before, but it sometimes gets a little bit complicated when you want the result of the if statement to be text. So let me show you how that works. All right, so the if statement is going to be if this cost amount is greater than or equal to the budget limit, and I'm going to anchor that because I don't want it to change as I scroll down. Now, since these are negatives, if the cost is greater than this limit, then that means that we're within the budget. So, for example, negative 10,000 should be a yes, because negative 10,000 is within our limit of not going any higher than 23,500. So I'm going to say if this is greater than or equal to the limit, then, so comma, and it says now what should it do if the value is true. I could put in a number, like I could say return the number 1 if it's possible, 0 if it's not possible, but instead of that, I'm going to have it return text, and so I have to put in the quotations and have it say yes if it's possible, and then the value if it's false will be no. Okay. So it says yes to this first one because it's within the budget limit. It's, 0 is within the budget limit. So far it seems to be working okay. Our first time that it should trigger a no is this 25,000, because 25,000 is too much. We can't afford that with the budget limit that we've got. And it triggers the no. Okay, we can just double click here and it'll apply the formula through all the rest of the table. For some reason not to the bottom one. All right. So now we know which of these combinations is possible given the budget limit, because the second step is going to analyze all of these possibilities and find out which combination of them is going to yield the most profit. Where should we spend our money? In other words, should we do B and C? Should we do B and D? Which is best? It may not necessarily be the one where we spend the most money. We don't know until we analyze each one of them, because each one of them has a different cash flow diagram. Any questions before we move on to the next step? We're doing okay on time, so I'm just going to pause here for a moment for everybody to catch up so we can move on to the next step together. All right, so we know how many feasible bundles are there. It should be, how many yeses do we have? Is it 10? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we can count up the yeses. Another way to do that, if you want to count up the yeses in kind of an automatic way, you could have it return the number 1 for yes, and have it return the number 0 for a no. All right, so now it gives us a 1 for all of the yeses, and then for some reason it's not filling it down there. And then we do like the sum. So equals sum, and so it's going to count up, and every time it has a 1, that's one of the projects that's possible. So we have 10 possible projects. All right, so the next phase of our study is to select which bundles are going to give us the maximum profit. We've got 10 possibilities, and it would be really tedious to go through and by hand calculate the present worth of all of those possibilities. We could. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be that bad. But Excel sure makes things a lot nicer. So what we can do is, as it says on your handout, you can add some additional column titles here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take the analysis that we've already got and include, so I'm going to add a sheet here with this button, add a new sheet. I'm going to take the old one and copy it all over to the new sheet. Control C is to copy. Oh, not there. And Control V will paste it. All right. So the new columns I'm going to have on there are going to be annual net cash flow and the present worth of the bundle. Okay. The cash flow amounts are given on the handout there, and they're also here on the screen, the cost for each of them. Oh, we already did the cost. The annual net cash flow is here. Now those are positives because that's the revenue coming in. Remember, so far these initial investments were negative because those were outflows, and our budget value is also negative because that's what we're going to spend to purchase or finance the projects. So when we have the annual net cash flow, those should be positive amounts. We don't get any money if we do nothing, so that's a 0. I'm going to delete these ones that are over the budget limit just so that the table is more compact. And the way you can delete rows from a table is you highlight each one of them over here using the control button, and then you can right-click on the number and say delete, and they'll just go away. Let me show you one thing real quick. Here in the present worth column, you're doing the payment function, but then outside of the payment, you're doing the present value function, and then outside of that, after the parentheses, then you should add the cost in, because the cost is already at the present. And so the total overall present worth of the bundle is taking the annual to the present plus the costs, which are already in the present. So you can do that in one formula by having the present value part and then having just adding the costs in after that. Based on the present worths, which project is the most profitable? AC. Here's the highest amount, $4,351. It's not the most expensive project. As it happens, CD would have cost us more, but it returns less. So I'm glad we did this analysis so we could pick the best one. Not that it matters, I guess, because it's not real. But let me show you one last thing, and that is conditional formatting. I think a couple of you already had that set up to where it automatically highlights or does does something to the one that's best. There's several different ways to set it up. One of them is to highlight all of the cells, and then you go to the Home tab, see Conditional Formatting, and I'm going to add a new rule. And I want my new rule to be that it formats the top one of the range. So the top one is going to be the highest number. And then the format I want it to do is I want it to bold it. And so it'll automatically bold the number that's the highest, so I don't have to manually go through and, like with my own mind, double check to find which one is the highest. So again, the way to get to those is you highlight the range that you want to apply the conditional formatting to, then it's under Home, Conditional Formatting. I added a new rule, and the rule that I added was only the top or bottom ranked value, and so I want to have it bold the top one. And the thing that it did was it bolded the text. All right. That's it for today. I'd recommend that you save your work if you created a spreadsheet, because I think you may find it helpful on homework. And as a reminder, I've got office hours now. If you'd like to stop by and ask me questions about the homework or about the project. I'm going to be grading those exams over the weekend, so I think we're both going to be having a lot of fun over the weekend. I'll post the grades online when I've got them available, and I'll send out an email just to let you know. So I'll see you Monday.